All right, good Saturday morning or Friday night or Thursday, or for some of you it's probably Sunday at 1 a.m. and you said, oh, ow, I gotta do my econ stuff. So I better turn this on. Good morning, whatever it is, okay? Now I'm loading up on my caffeine, so this is going to be exciting. It's going to be non-stop. We've looked at, and you just finished your test on different economic systems. We've looked at what is economics. We've looked at what are we studying with economics. We've looked at traditional economies. We've looked at command economies. We've looked at the basic notion of what a market system looks like. We're now going forward, chapter 4, 5, and 6. We're looking at what makes a market system work. Three elements here: supply, demand, and price. We will look at them in the order of demand, supply, and then price. Okay? So we've got to do some definitional stuff at the beginning. We're going to learn about and understand the law of demand and its application in real life. We're going to learn a phrase. You have to know this. You are required to know this. Ceteris paribus. It's not in the book. We're going to learn what causes shifts in demand. We're going to learn what causes shifts and changes in quantity demanded. Understand, demand and quantity demanded are not the same. The sooner you figure that out, the better off you're going to be. We're going to understand how changes in price cause larger and smaller changes in demand for different products. This is a concept we call elasticity. If I increase the price of insulin by $1, it will have less effect on the sale of insulin than if I increase the price of donuts by $1. Because donuts, the elasticity of demand is much greater. We'll see how that works. And we're going to learn how to graph and interpret a demand curve. Okay? So that's what we're going to do in chapter 4. We're going to get started today, and we will finish then next week when you get back. Okay? Now, the first thing we have to do is some definitional stuff. So we start off with, what is a market? A market is all the buyers of a seller and sellers of a particular good or service. Understand, a market is not a place. It's not like to market to buy a fat pig, home again, jiggity jig. It's not a place, it's a group. All the buyers and sellers of a particular good or service. So we talk about the construction market, the food market, the restaurant market, the housing sales market, the automobile market, the market for petroleum, etc., etc., etc. All the buyers and sellers of that particular good or service. In a competitive market, we've got to understand this. When we talk about a market system, we are talking about usually a competitive market. In a competitive market, there are so many buyers and sellers of this particular good or service that no one buyer or seller can dictate the price in the market. Okay? Why is this? Because if I have lots of buyers and one buyer wants to pay a lower price, the seller can just say, nah baby, nah. Let's say, for instance, Riley Neal. Riley Neal goes over to Comac Station because he wants some ice cream. And he steps up and he says, my good man, I would have some of that frozen, tasty comestible which you purvey here, because he talks like that. He says, I'd like to have that. And the guy behind the counter says, what are you talking about? Finally they figure out, I want an ice cream cone. Guy says, that'll be $1.25. Riley says, I'm only going to pay 75 cents. And the guy says, no, it'll be $1.25. Riley says, I will not move off of 75 cents. What's going to happen? Eventually the dude's going to say, go, be gone, hie thee hence, vex me no more, because he's got somebody standing in line behind Riley willing to pay the $1.25 for the ice cream cone. Conversely, if Riley goes in and says, I want an ice cream cone, and the guy behind the counter says, that'll be 10 bucks, Riley's going to say, sorry, and Riley's going to go down the road to Ivanhoe's or Goods or Dairy Queen or someplace like that, and he's going to buy his ice cream cone there. So no one buyer or seller can control the price of the market. Now, we have situations that we call monopolies and oligopolies in which one buyer or seller does control, or a few do control, but we call that's why we call that a market failure, because the market doesn't work the way we expect it to do in a competitive market setting. Now, we're going to assume that we are operating in a perfectly competitive market with many buyers and sellers. The product is identical or similar. Corn is corn is corn, and no one buyer or seller can have an impact on the price, so they are all what we call price takers. They have to take the price that the market sets. They cannot say, I'm going to deviate from the market price. That's not going to happen. No one buyer or seller can set the price. Now, demand, here we go. Demand is the amount of goods and services consumers. Demand is consumers, people who are on our circular flow, households. Consumers in a particular market are willing to buy at various prices at a particular time and place. As we said, the market is the exchange of all the buyers and sellers of a particular good or service. It's not geographic. Okay? So, the amount of goods and services consumers in a particular market are willing to buy at various prices at a particular time and place. The law of demand says, ceteris paribus. Ceteris paribus is a Latin phrase. It means all things being equal. Everything we talk about here, we're eliminating all the variables except price and quantity. So, everything else is equal. That's all we're saying when we say ceteris paribus, or all things being equal. We're only going to focus on two variables, price and quantity. The basic rule is, the higher the price of a good, the lower the demand. The lower the price of a good, the higher, or the more people will want. Now, here's the way we do this. Demand looks like this. High price, low quantity. Low price, high quantity. Just remember, that's demand. That's going to become very important later on, because we're going to talk about supply and demand. Remember it that way. Most people are going to buy more goods and services when prices are lower. So, we're looking at a connection between goods and services and the quantity demanded. We're looking at, for instance, what happens on Black Friday or the day after Christmas. Malls become crowded. Why? Because ostensibly or supposedly the retailers are offering discounted prices. So everybody goes in and says, oh, I can get it today at a much lower rate, so I'm going to buy it now. Low price, high demand. Okay? The day after Christmas, what happens? Everybody takes their stuff back. They slice prices. Why? Because they need to get their money in. They need to get their money in before the end of a year. Now, we've talked about competitive markets. Goods are all exactly the same. Buyers and sellers are numerous. Monopoly is an example of market failure. We've only got one seller who has tremendous influence on price, but he is still, or she is still, limited by demand. Now, we can illustrate demand graphically. Okay? We can do a couple things here. We can look at a demand schedule. A demand schedule shows me the price and the quantity demanded at that price. So at $1, quantity demanded will be 10. At $2, 8. At $3, 6. At $4, 4, etc., etc. Now, I can take that demand schedule and I can graph it. Now remember, when we're talking about graphs, what are we doing? We're telling a story. The story that we're telling is the relationship between price and quantity. We always put price on the vertical axis, and we always put quantity on the horizontal axis. So let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Eight, 9, 10, right? Now let's look at price. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this is in dollars. Okay, at $1, what's my quantity demanded? 1 and 10, right there. At $2, my quantity demanded would be 8. At $3, quantity demanded is 6, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth. Now, if I connect those dots together, all the points that I've gotten from my demand schedule, I end up with a curve that looks like this. It slopes down and to the right. Down and to the right. Now, why does it slope down and to the right? Because it's telling me the story. What story does it tell me? As price comes down, quantity demanded increases. As price comes down, quantity demanded increases. And as price goes up, quantity demanded decreases. It's telling me the story of the law of demand. Okay? Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take the graph paper, and this is going to be a way of ensuring that you actually did this. You're going to bring it back to class with you. I want you to graph this. You can just pause this right now. Go ahead and graph this, price, quantity, etc. And show me what you come up with. You're going to have to bring that with you to class on Monday or Tuesday. Now, this is called a demand curve. Each point on the curve tells me the quantity purchased at that particular price. The slope is down and to the right, indicating a negative or inverse relationship between the variable price and the variable quantity. There is a negative relationship between price and quantity. As price increases, quantity demanded will go down and vice versa. Okay, that's to help you understand how to graph it. Now, here's something else. Here's something else we're going to have to understand. If I move from point A to point B here, what has happened? Moving from A to B, what we say is quantity demanded has increased from 6 to 8 units. Quantity demanded, movement along the curve, tells me the response to the change in price. And it's quantity demanded, movement along the curve. If the whole curve moves, okay, if I go from D1 to D2, this is change in quantity demanded. This movement out, what's happened? At each price level, I have an increase in consumption of the good. I have an increase in demand. So, for an example, when the United States came out of the recession, demand curves in all kinds of markets shifted to the right. Why? Because people were willing to consume more. They were willing to spend more money. They had the money and they felt comfortable with it, with spending it. Okay? So that's quantity demanded versus demand. And when we talk about this, we say, you got to talk right. You got to say, the curve has moved right or left or in or out. You don't say demand is up or demand is down. It's in, it's out, it's right, it's left. If I'm moving along the curve, I talk about change in quantity demanded. Okay? Moving from A to B. Now, what's going to cause movement along this curve? There's only one thing that changes movement or causes movement along the curve, and that is a change in price. This is only predicated on change of price. When we talk about movement of the entire curve, we will see that there are several factors that will affect that. Substitutes, income, lots of other things like that. But for our purposes, the only thing that's going to change or cause movement along the curve is a change in price. So we got that. The only thing that causes change in quantity demanded is price. Say it with me. The only thing that changes quantity demanded is a change in price. I know some of you weren't saying that because I didn't hear you. So I know. Say it with me. Repeat it, okay? Learn it. Cheaters. Okay. Things that might cause the whole curve to shift right or left. Increases in income would be a huge one. In the 1880s, what we see happen in the United States, people move from farms to cities and they start working in factories. And they get regular wages, and over the course of time, those wages start to go up. Because they have more income, they can demand more things. What happens? The demand curve for all kinds of goods starts to shift to the right. For example, let's just take dresses. Before 1876, most women lived on farms, and a lot of them made their own clothing. The same was true of their families. But once they move into towns, they have, first of all, they're working lots of hours a day. They already did on the farm, but even more so. And they have available to them retail stores and outlets where they could go buy complete ready-made dresses. So we start to see an increase in demand for dresses, ready-made, at the retail level. Okay? So that would be a change in income. If income rises and prices remain the same, we're going to shift. If it rises for everyone. And what will happen is prices will start to go up then. So when we talk about inflation, sometimes we have inflation that's just based on an increase in demand. That happens. What we don't want is inflation based on devaluation of our currency. That's another matter for another day. Okay, now here's what we're going to do. You're going to bring back your graph, and you're going to do the study guide for Chapter 4, which is posted in the resources on my big campus. So those are the two things you're going to bring back. Shouldn't take you too long. You're going to need your textbook to do that study guide. We will finish the rest of this at a later time. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm pretty sure some of you it's 3 o'clock in the morning, so you don't have a lot to enjoy, but enjoy what's there. I'll see you on Monday and Tuesday.